Okay, so you should have tried this one already on your paper, but now I'm going to work it out for you just so you can make sure that all of the steps worked like they were supposed to. So that was a mess. Okay, so for my first value of x, I've got pi over 2. So I'm going to put in pi over 2 in place of all of the x's within the equation. So that would make it, say, 2 sine squared of pi over 2 minus sine of pi over 2 is equal to 1. Okay, we do have to evaluate the trig expression first. Sine squared of something actually means sine of that value and then square the result. So my first thing to do would be to figure out what sine of pi over 2 is. Let's see, I could think about that two ways. I could use my hand trick. Pi over 2 is just the thumb. And so that would give me 4 fingers below. And you take the square root of that and put it over 2. Square root of 4 is 2, divided by 2 is 1. So sine of pi over 2 is 1. I could also think of it as the unit on the unit circle. Pi over 2 is the positive y-axis, which is 1 unit up from 0, and sine is the y value on the unit circle. So that would be 1. So sine of pi over 2 is 1. Next, in the order of operations, I would have to do this exponent. That would have the next highest priority. So 1 squared is 1. Then the multiplication. So 2 times 1 is 2, minus 1. And 2 minus 1 is definitely 1. That's far enough for me to tell. Now we'll try the second one. So we'd say x is 7 pi over 6. And again, we're going to put that in place of all the x's in the equation. So 2 sine squared of 7 pi over 6 minus sine of 7 pi over 6 equals 1. All right, so once again, I need to deal with the trig function first, the trig expression there. So sine of 7 pi over 6. 7 pi over 6 is in quadrant 3. And in quadrant 3, sine is negative. So I'm going to go ahead and put a negative in each of those. Reference angle there is pi over 6. So I'm going to use my hand trick. That would be the ring finger I would fold down. And again, sine is the number of fingers below the one that's folded down. So that would be 1. Square root of 1 over 2. So 1/2. All right, now I can do the squaring. That's the next highest priority. So a negative 1/2 squared. Negative times itself is positive. And a 1/2 times a 1/2 is 1 times 1 over 2 times 2, so 1/4. The next priority would be the multiplication. So I would need to do this 2 times the negative 1/4. I would also need to deal with this negative minus a negative that's going on over here. So 2 times the 4th would be 2/4, which is 1/2. And a negative, minus a negative is the same as plus. So now I have 1/2 plus 1/2 is equal to 1, which is definitely true. So both of these solutions satisfy that original equation. All right, so now there is another problem for you to try here. This time, they're not saying that each of these is a solution. This time you have to determine if each of those values is a solution to the equation that's given there. So you'll need to put them in and try them one by one, and then answer on the Google form which ones are.